Well, here I am back in my shop. I brought my rickskiff home. I meant to film it before I flipped it over. I'll do that later. But what I've done, as you can see, the original design is kind of a catamaran type. And when I first tested it in my neighbor's pond back here, with just this 2-inch pontoons on each side, the center part never got into water. It was floating in 2 inches of water. But now, because the bow up here never touched the water when I was in it before I painted it and put all the cloth on it, when it was just the first test. And so down at the marsh, as you can see, it's riding right down in the water here a little bit. And so I decided, just for the heck of it, to come in here and add another layer, another 2-inch layer of foam to give me a 4-inch pontoon. And maybe that'll bring it back up out of the water. I'm pretty close to it. And the foam's $30 with tax. And that's what's left over here. But you just have to take the 8-foot, and then I had to glue it together right here, make me a joint. Just to put some masking tape on here, fold it back, put your Gorilla Glue in there, then fold it down, put your weight on it, and some wax paper underneath it so you won't glue it to whatever you got it sitting on. And it makes it pretty rigid and works good. So just got it rough shaped. I just laid the piece up here, cut it the width of my pontoon, lay it up on here, take your pencil, draw it out, take my jigsaw with a wood cutting blade in it, and you can cut it as fast as you can move it. So don't waste your money buying a hot wire and special cutting blades for foam. That's a waste of time and money. Just use a jigsaw with a smooth cutting wood blade in it, and it'll cut it just as smooth. I think I got the rough cutting blade in there, and you can still see it's pretty smooth. But normally I use the wood smooth cutting blade, and it's almost like the factory finish when you get through with it. Very little difference. But I got Gorilla Glue, and I just got these rough sanding it. Just rough sanded, put my Gorilla Glue on here. And what you have to do, if you've never built one before, when I go to glue the top piece onto here, I have some concrete pavers from Lowe's or Home Depot, wherever it came from. I use that for weight to hold this down, but the weight alone won't work. So I got these long deck screws. When I put this on here, I run this deck screw in there just part of the way, just enough to hold it, keep it from sliding, because if you don't, you come back out here after you set your weights on it and it'll be done shifted one way or the other. So don't ask me how I know that, because that's what happens. But just take a couple of these along through here, and that'll keep it from moving as that Gorilla Glue expands. And then you can always just take this back out, put your drop of glue in there and seal it back up, put your cloth on it. And what I have on the bottom now is painter's drop cloth, and exterior latex paint. And I did take let's see, this automotive Bondo fiberglass resin right there. I think it's like $20-something for the whole gallon versus $150 to $200 for the West Marine system, which is what you're supposed to use. And I have a cedar strip boat outside that I used that on about 10 years ago. It looks great, but this is just a cheap boat. But I just mixed me up a batch of that resin and put on here on top of the paint and cloth after everything was on there, which is not the way you're supposed to do it. As you can see, it's held up good. Fishing there just almost every day in the salt marsh with oyster beds and all that. Here's where I run it up on the bank. You can see it scuffed up a little bit at the landing. And you can see here where it's been hitting. And this flat spot, that's where I pull it up on my trailer and lock it down. It's kind of flattened it out a little bit, but that's because I don't have any fiberglass here. It's just basically paint. I'm gonna go ahead and glue these down. And then tomorrow, once it's on here, you can see it's kind of rough. I take my belt sander with the 80 grit paper, and you have to be real careful, especially if you've never used a belt sander before. On this foam, it'll eat it up in a hurry. So if you want to take your time, you can do it by hand, but that takes a long time. And the little vibrating sander works. Still, it's pretty slow. But I'll just rough shape it, round it over a little bit with the belt sander, then come back with my little electric sander and shape it up, finish shaping it, and then put my tight bond wood glue on here, and I'm going to use bed sheet to cover the bottom this time to keep it from being so much heavier. And this stuff here is held up really good. There's no tears or anything in it. A few little scratches, but nothing. I got one spot up here, right here I think it is. It looks like it got a little cut in it. But that's the only place in several months of fishing in the marsh and running up over sandbar, oyster bars and all that kind of mess. So this is the first part. I'll show you some more as I get going, and show you what the finished thing's gonna look like. And I'll probably take it down to the river and see how it floats after I do all this. I'll try to video that too. So this is part one of it. We'll see what happens. Okay, I've got my new pieces on here. Got the papers on it to hold it down. As you can see, I have little screws stuck in here. The little wooden barbecue skewers. I got some around here somewhere. It's what I normally use, but since I put that fiberglass resin over the top of the cloth, they won't stick in there. So that's the reason I use the wood screws, which they work fine anyway. But I'll probably let it sit overnight, come out here tomorrow, and start sanding it down and get it shaped up. Like I say, with the belt sander, it won't take long. It'll shape it up really fast. And what I'll do is just kind of bring this up and kind of round it over. I'll round it over a little bit on the inside edges. And then after I do that, I'll see what happens. I have my darn phone. Appreciate it.